Okay, so I'm Mitchell. This is my term flip chart project for History and Impact of Turf, and I did it on Tom Mascaro and his inventions. Now, I'm not an artist. I don't own an easel, so I rigged up this thing with the chair and the flip chart, so you'll just have to bear with me. There might be some catastrophic failure at some point throughout the video. But anyway, let's get started. So Tom Mascaro, he was born in Oakland Park, Florida. He had a childhood bout with polio that left him partially paralyzed. Now, that threw a wrench in his golf game, but he did love the game and chose to surround himself with people in the industry, such as superintendents, manufacturers of turf equipment, and golfers. Now, prior to making his airifier and verticutter, this guy had a couple patents. He owned a top dressing business with his brother. Now, this gave him a foot in the door when it came to manufacturing turf grass equipment. In 1946, he made his airifier. Now, it was almost an overnight success, and it quickly became the standard in the golf industry, and he dubbed it the West Point airifier. Now, a couple things about airification and the process of airification. Airification makes slits or holes in the soil. Now, the reason you do that is because it relieves compaction, improves drainage, permits air and nutrients to reach the roots. Now, the reason this is important is because roots have the all-important job of obtaining water, nutrients, and gases used during photosynthesis. Sorry, camera's a little bit out of line there. All right. Now, soil compaction and poor drainage prevents this process. This is very cost ineffective when you're trying to throw fertilizer and throw an irrigation at it. If the soil is too compacted, you're wasting your time and money. So Mascaro knew this and set to work on a solution. Now, airification wasn't new at this point. In fact, the earliest documentation of the practice was from 1912. Now, this involved using a pitchfork or a round stake that you could just walk around and poke holes in the ground, which you can imagine would be extremely time-consuming. So, the original West Point airifier was a spoon-top airifier, which meant that it was mounted on a wheel, much like a wagon wheel, or even better way to imagine it would be like an old ship wheel, and it rolled along, and as it rolled along, the stakes, what we call tines, which were solid tines at the time, were pushed into the ground at an angle, and then upon exiting, they came out of the ground at an angle. This is obviously the direction of travel, so it goes like this, in at an angle, comes out at an angle. Now this means that when the tines come out, they exit the turf at an angle, resulting in damage to your turf. Now, a lot of superintendents had issue using this on their greens because it lifted up the turf at the rear of the core hole, which means that it disrupted the playing surface on your putting greens. And anybody who knows anything about golf knows that that is a major no-no. You can't have the ball bouncing along when you're trying to putt. So, Mascaro's solution to this was the West Point FG1. Now, this is an interesting machine because it is very similar to the air fryers we use today. One of the most interesting things about this machine is that it was manufactured from a converted printing press called a rose progrger that employed hollow tines that, and this is important, entered and exited the turf vertically. This revolutionized aerification because this meant that you could use it on your greens. It was walk behind, one man could operate it, and it moved at about 3.1 miles an hour, which made it very time and cost effective. Now since then, the air fryers remain much the same. Really, honestly, there's been very little changes to them. Some of them have electric batteries now as opposed to being gas powered. And obviously there are different variations like using water such as the hydroject to aerify greens. And some of them actually have a mechanism that immediately deposits sand in the hole after punching them, which is pretty neat. But anyway, I digress. Mascaro sold his rights to his air fryer in 1970, and now many people make them. One of the biggest and most common air fryer manufacturers that you'll run across is Toro. I know that most of the golf courses I've worked at use Toro. So that leads us to his Verticutter. In 1952, Mascaro invented the Verticutter, which is basically a lawnmower, but you replace the reel or rotary blade with a horizontal spinning shaft, meaning it's laid out this way and spins over itself, that has blades mounted along the length of it. So if you imagine like a rototiller, same concept, only blades that were similar to like a pizza cutter. Now, as these spin, they cut the blades of grass that grow horizontally, so your stolons and rhizomes that grow across or a little below the surface. It would penetrate the soil and cut these along the ground. You know, these are the blades that are traditionally left out by your rotary and reel mowers. Lowering the blade allows for deep contact and thatch removal, which we all know thatch buildup, compaction, poor drainage. These are huge issues to golf course superintendents. This process not only relieves compaction, but not only relieves compaction and thatch, actually, I should say, but it also smooths the surface. When you get rid of those runners that are growing along the surface of the ground, it takes away some of the bumpiness that your golf ball might roll across and alter its path. So now it's important to note that plants do not grow at the same rate. So the Verticutter removes faster growing plants that may be objectionable. As with many cultivation practices, this process must be used in tandem with mowing in order to remove the materials left by your Verticutter. So it's not enough just to verticut. You must come back over it immediately after with your traditional reel or rotary mower and cut up all the debris you've left on the surface. Otherwise, you won't do yourself any favors. So, that's Tom Mascaro. He left a huge impact on the turfgrass industry. In fact, golf courses wouldn't be what they are today without his inventions. So, give the man credit. He was brilliant, and that was my rough draft term project. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.